the Recycling and Education Director for the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, SWANCC. SWANCC is, influences the communities and school programs regarding waste. She began her tenure in 1995. She's also received a lot of national and state awards, including in October 2019, received the Sustainability Partnership Game Changer Award, along with the Village of Mount Prospect and National Waste and Cycling Association. Also, Public Health Partners and Excellence Award, Excellence in School Curriculum Award, Solid Waste Association of North America, this Distinguished Service Award, also the Illinois Counties Solid Waste Management Association, and the Outstanding Government Recycling Programs Award from the Illinois Recycling Association. So she's contributed greatly. And she's served on various professional boards as well and councils, speaks frequently at the state and national level in conferences, and she's a founding member of the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. So anyway, without further ado, Mary.
Thank you. Let me quickly share my screen with you. I do have a formal presentation. And I'm going to ask that you hold questions till the end. Jim had mentioned that Peter's got a few, and then we'll add to that through the chat box if you don't mind. That way I can get to the end, and maybe I might answer your question while I'm on the way. Excuse me, to the end. So thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Jim, for asking me to come tonight. My presentation this evening addresses waste during the pandemic, the generation of it, as well as the state of recycling, what stakeholder groups are doing for circularity, and also some timely bills down in Springfield and a national one that are related to single-use products and the extended producer responsibility model. So let me get ready and off we go. So at the onset of COVID, remember how fearful that time was? It really wasn't known if the virus was transferable to containers or not from ill people. And so much of what was picked up at the curb, at least within the first month, the first 2 months, was either held in a bay at a recycling facility or landfilled. Service providers were challenged with working with fewer employees due to contracting COVID. Haulers suspended picking up bulk materials and yard organics initially, so they could focus on the basic needs of just garbage and recycling. And then recyclers asked customers that were ill to not recycle, to bag up their recycling and throw it away in the garbage until they were not ill. With the stay-at-home order, residential garbage volumes increased and commercial garbage volumes decreased because people weren't in those buildings. So route adjustments needed to be to happen. And then looking at the garbage that's come into the agency's transfer station, for the past 3 years, on average, the garbage varies between 3 to 8 tons, maybe sometimes 10 tons in a really wet year where we get a lot of basement garbage and it's heavy due to the rains and flooding. But from the period of March 2020 to March 2021, waste increased by almost 16 tons, which is pretty substantial. That total is 267,600 tons that were taken in during that period. On the other hand, recycling numbers have not escalated like I expected them to do with all those people at home drinking mass amounts. The COVID totals during that same period actually were down by 3 tons in comparison with the year 2018. So the rise in garbage is attributed to a couple different things. Because bulk items were not being picked up curbside, and people moving needed to get rid of their things immediately that they weren't taking with them, we received a lot of that for landfill. Also, with people working from home, a lot of closets got cleaned out, but unfortunately, outlets to donate your materials to were closed, and many of those things got landfilled. Panic buying. People worried that supplies would run out or that they would need more than they usually buy, so they wouldn't have to go to the store as often, led to stockpiling resources, which in turn increases waste items. And then with the increase of food delivery and curbside pickup, we know the volume of single-use containers, condiments, and cutlery has escalated. There was also a perception that single-use items were far safer than reusables, which I'm glad scientists have debunked. So now, and because grocery stores wouldn't allow us to bring our reusable bags, coffee shops wouldn't allow us to bring our reusable coffee cups to be refilled, all while those retail plastic bag collection containers were removed. So my takeaway from all of that personally is cooking meals at home was definitely a way to decrease the amount of single-use plastic and containers by not generating it. The increase of disposable PPE and wipes also surged in waste. Gloves and masks were not always tied in a garbage bag. Some were found in recycling carts. Others are found as litter on the ground. So if you need to purchase a reusable mask, at least cut the strings of that mask before it goes into the garbage. As we all know, single plastics and other types of litter is a global problem that negatively impacts wildlife, ecosystems, and even our food chain, especially as the sun, water, and wind break down plastics into teeny tiny micro pieces. It's estimated that 9 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans each year. And of the nearly 300 million tons of plastics produced, half of that is for single plastic products. It's projected by the World Economic Forum that there'll be more plastic than fish in weight by the year 2050, as well as plastic production will increase by 40%. I was looking over the Sierra Club newsletter and saw that you have a lot of good information about plastic generation and pollution facts. So if you haven't gone and read that yet, please do, especially after this presentation, be more meaningful. COVID-19 has also found millions of Americans facing food insecurity for the first time. Many people now face increased financial burden, loss in income, or sometimes both. Please keep in mind that recovering food, good food, to donate to food, to shelters, to food pantries, to hungry families is preferred over composting. And we all know that regional and local food banks, churches, and other organizations have worked tirelessly to provide meals and food to families in need. The Love Fridge is a new Chicago mutual aid group that is providing the refrigerators and pantries in Chicago neighborhoods. I just got wind that they're starting one in Evanston. During COVID-19, people got innovative. The staff at Northwestern University donated 10,000 meals to neighboring communities that the students didn't eat or weren't there and wanted. So rather than have them go to waste, they enlisted over 60 different organizations to come and pick up the meals from the university. And they were very appreciative. The Wasted Food Action Alliance has an Illinois Food Waste Action Plan. It's going to be a working document that people who look at it can add to and contribute to. It's a conversation that will be ever changing. I happen to be a part of this task force group since the beginning, and last year was privileged to work with some other colleagues to develop a toolkit called the Food Waste Reduction Toolkit for Illinois Schools. This is for K through 12. And unfortunately, we launched it last April, bad timing. Because of virtual learning, this toolkit has not been utilized much by schools. And we're hoping as students return back to school classrooms that hopefully by next fall, we can start seeing some new normal and tackle the idea that reusables are not less safe than single plastics, because we need that to go down. USDA and EPA have a lofty goal to reduce food waste 50% by 2030. Some initiatives to reduce waste include the Let's Shed the Plastic initiatives from our Shed Aquarium. You can go online and sign their pledge, and they have different components to that initiative. Cut out cutlery, I saw was in the newsletter. And that's if you're going to be ordering out and you don't need the condiments, you don't need the plastic cutlery, let them know. Not only does it save them money, but it saves the waste. Dispatch Goods and Deliver Zero are two organizations that are working directly with restaurants to supply reusables and then get them delivered. Customers pay a deposit for the reusable container that gets returned and washed and used again. Dispatch Goods is in California right now, but they're wanting to come to Chicago. Word on the street is they are coming to Chicago. And then Rethink Disposable is for businesses, governments, and communities. Their guidelines for reducing single plastic waste, as well as other initiatives. I was really excited about a House Bill 647 that I just learned got tabled. This was initiated by the Illinois Environmental Council, Jen Walling and her group. It was for BYOB, bring your own, reusable containers to stores and restaurants. It wasn't as strong as they needed it to be with the COVID fear. So they're going to look at it, make it stronger, and repropose it next year. So for several decades, US recyclers exported almost 70% of what you and I put in our carts to China and other countries. Wish cycling caused loads of materials to be contaminated, which is putting in materials that aren't wanted by the recyclers or have very low value. So as a result, in 2018, China instituted its Green Sword policy, restricting exports, especially mixed paper and low-grade plastics. And other countries have followed China's lead. Overnight in America, market prices dropped, and US recyclers were left with materials they couldn't move. Without the export markets, the United States recycling industry was left to deal with its flawed recycling system. So even with its flaws, recycling's not going to go away. It just needs to be better. And so that's what groups are striving to do. The US EPA recently set a new goal to recycle 50% by 2030. Kind of an arbitrary number, but they do, until it gets some teeth into it, it's so new. Right now they say that 32% of our materials are recycled, but part of that is composting in that total number. Our landscape waste, not food waste, I'm sorry. And then as paper mills and recyclers invest in new technology, optical sorters, artificial intelligence, quality materials at the curb are finding their way to domestic markets. However, it is going to take time, money, and partnership to build a strong, more efficient, effective system, which is in the works. I'll be talking about some of those stakeholder groups in a few minutes. So for now, it's really about going back to the basics, sticking to the list of acceptable materials, and no, not everything can be recycled at the curb. So stick to the list of your community's recycling guidelines, and remember these 4 words: empty, clean, loose, and dry. Empty, clean, loose, do not bag your recycling, and close the lid to keep it dry. Updated information is on the agency's website. I just updated our Recycling Right Matters video. And we also have some guidelines that are indicative of Northern Illinois. And those guidelines were developed by the Illinois Task Force for Recycling Contamination Solutions, of which Dave and I both are a part of. So I wanted to show you what artificial intelligence looks like at a recycling facility. What I'm about to show you is a very short video from LRS, known as Lakeshore Recycling, that cost about $1 million that they got from the Closed Loop Fund several years ago, and it's called a positive pick. And this is really the wave of the next generation of MRFs, the material recovery facilities, in sorting out the quality materials. I guess it won't let me go on until it finishes. Okay, there we go. So there's really no one silver bullet to fix our flawed recycling system, but there are some good ideas, and there's a lot of people with brilliant minds trying to figure out a way. And the key word is circularity. So the one thing that will help is if manufacturers evaluate the embodied value of each product to get to the true cost of its carbon footprint. As 99% of greenhouse gas emissions occur downstream through the extraction, manufacturing, transportation, and use. And then secondly, a circular economy requires consideration of material health, the concept of safe and circular. This is a key focus of the Cradle to Cradle by William McDonough and Michael Braungart, where the product should be designed to be benign. They say less bad is not good. Put your values first and design without toxic materials. Additionally, product manufacturers and packaging designers are working towards increasing the percentage of recycled content that they're going to be using for new products, as well as striving to keep their materials in a continual loop as they make new products. So by getting away from the traditional linear economy, it will lead to increased economic and environmental sustainability. The Product Stewardship Institute, PSI, advocates for extended producer responsibility, which means having manufacturers bear a significant degree of responsibility for the environmental impacts and the recovery of their products, and to help with the costs of the collection and transportation. SWANCC happens to be a member of the Illinois Product Stewardship, which is a state chapter of the PSI. These are some of the new stakeholder groups that are collaborating with each other. Several are global and others are national. I'll just say a couple things about each one of them rather than spending too much time. And if you have questions, you can either look up yourself or we can talk afterwards, or I can email you additional information. So the new plastics economy involves 40 companies and cities across the global plastic packaging value chain. And they're looking, one of their pillars is to be free of hazardous chemicals, which would be wonderful. We know that there's a lot of health implications found by plastics leaching into our food, into our beverages. So I think that that's got to be something that all these plastic collaborations strive for, especially if production of plastic products are going to increase by 40% by 2050. At least they need to be healthy for us and healthy for our environment. The World Economic Forum and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation support the new plastics economy, which is, then the Plastic Pact is also a network, global network that are aligned to respond to plastic waste and pollution, which enables vital knowledge sharing and coordinating actions. The Plastic Waste and Transparency Project is a watchdog group. The Basel Action Network, BAN, who's known for their work with electronics in developing countries and new laws established as a result of finding out how those products were being manufactured and recycled or smelted in the backyards. So unfortunately, the US is not part of this agreement. But what this new project does, it targets shipping lines not to export low-grade materials and compile trade data. So there are people over in some of those developing countries that even though their law says no more export, it still is a living for them. But the ban, it's not a humane thing to do to continue to send our trash else, to other places. So they are a good watchdog group. The Great Lakes Circular Economy is a binational partnership of 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces to develop an action plan and work together to protect our Great Lakes. There's a lot of litter and plastic in our fresh water. And so right now they're looking for funding partners, and they're also looking for knowledge partners from nonprofit organizations, should any of you be interested in joining that group. Because they want to develop this action plan. They have a 5-year plan, a goal to get some things executed. So it's really the beginning of the conversation. The Closed Loop Foundation is a New York-based investment firm that has provided over $70 million to companies, organizations, and communities working to reduce food, packaging, and plastic waste. LRS received $1 million from the Closed Loop Foundation to buy their artificial intelligence, their robot that does the positive picking. The Foundation for Plastics Recycling is more about Buy Recycled campaign to keep those plastics in the circular economy. And then the Recycling Partnership leads among their stakeholder group, National Force for Improving Municipal Recycling. They have wonderful social media and other resources. They've got tons of case studies on what works, on how to change behavior, oops tags that you can put out. They just really are creative, and with this collective group of stakeholders, they have some funds to really help communities get curbside recycling. Brightmark is a little bit different. Brightmark right now in Indiana is under construction. It's a plant that's going to use pyrolysis. It's a chemical recycling technology to take low-grade plastics, or pretty much any plastics, and transform them into key hydrocarbon mixtures that can be used as fuel or a raw material to make base petrochemicals for other products. So that is one that's going to be looked at and emulated for some of those low-grade plastics right now that are not being recycled, that are not being put back in circularity. That is one of the options. And then I wanted to just review with you a few of the proposed legislations, the bills that are here locally in the state, but also the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It's a big one. It's an effort to stop the mass production and consumption of plastics. It's supported by an Oregon senator and a California representative that was introduced to Congress on March 25th this year, 2021. And so there's 5 different things that they're asking within this act. It targets EPR, the extended producer responsibility. So the package manufacturers bear the financial burden, design, collection, reuse, recycling, and disposal of their consumer products and packaging. Number 2, it requires plastic manufacturers to increase the post-recycled content of beverage containers incrementally up to 75% by 2040. It halts the international exports of plastics until new rules are established. It proposes a nationwide single-use bag ban and outlines a national bottle bill. As you can imagine, it's drawn some resistance from plastic producers, experts in the industry, and associations who say the bill will only hurt efforts to bolster solid waste and recycling infrastructure in the United States. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of SWANCC. Some of you may be members of Solid Waste Agency of Lake County. If you're on that, I know you're North Cook, but it may extend that way, and also the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. We're actually looking at exploring extended producer responsibility legislation that mirrors the EU, 5 Canadian provinces, and other countries to include all packaging, including bottles. So this limiting legislation to only a bottle bill will negatively impact recycling costs, curbside. So if any of you are interested in asking me more questions, I can answer that. But right now, that's what we're looking at doing, putting it all together. Why piecemeal it? And especially as a state, we can be stronger, and it's not residents with a bottle bill. You have to pay the tax, and then you have to go get redemption when you're done with the bottles. Under the EPR, that is all done. They work directly with the recycler to do everything that needs to be done, and they also pay for it. So it saves municipalities money. So those are some of the, with the House Bill 1799 and House Bill 3067, if they can all be grouped together, that would be awesome. And then there are some EPR legislation, the paint, the carpet, and pharmaceuticals, all are being moved. Some of them need to be tweaked, and you can, Barbara Hill is your political gal, and I'm sure she's abreast at what's going on here in Illinois as well. So I always say there's always something more that we can do. That was something that Peter had said, you know, let us know what more can we do? And I say, look around, because there's always something more that can be done to prevent or minimize waste and to educate others, team up with others, and certainly lead by example. So I wanted to highlight a couple things on the screen. I know Tim Melbourne from Park Ridge because I'm also in Park Ridge, and we both are on the Go Green Park Ridge group. And I'm very proud of the SLURP initiative that members instituted years ago to get restaurants involved in serving straws only upon request. And things with COVID have fallen out. And again, as things start to be more normal again, we're looking for pushing that initiative in more of the restaurants that are still open that aren't SLURP, on board with SLURP. And then the Buy Nothing Project and Nextdoor are both platforms on social media that if you have something to give away, you post a picture, its dimensions, when you want it picked up, and boom, it's gone. I'm amazed at things that get disseminated that way. And it's an easy way. They come pick it up. And certainly compost. There's numerous ways to do it. If you don't have a lot of space, you can do bokashi, you can do vermicomposting inside all year long. And then outside composting at home in your backyard has the lower carbon footprint than a formal program, a commercial program that gets picked up and taken to a commercial facility. Certainly picking up on cleanup days. I'm involved in one with Go Green Park Ridge on April 25th. And the Take 3 is a global initiative. When you're out, if you're walking, if you're jogging, if you pick up trash that you see, take a picture of it, post it. It's about peer motivation to show other people that you care, that hopefully ignites and other people care, and a lot of litter gets picked up globally that way. And certainly the Plastic Pollution Coalition is a wonderful organization to know more about, and they have some really good resources and information. So if you're looking to reuse, recycle, or looking for safe disposal for something that can't go in the garbage, let your fingers do the walking and visit SWANCC's newly designed website. It's just a couple weeks old, so there's still a few kinks that we're ironing out, but sign up to receive our e-list and connect with us on Facebook or Twitter. There's a lot of resources that we have related to reduce, reuse, recycle, and videos as well. So as always, compadres, for the environment, thank you for caring. I think leading by example is something I try and do in my own life. And there's so much that individuals can do, but when we put our minds and our efforts together collectively, so much more can happen. And at this point in our society, it really is time for all sectors to come together to protect our earth and its resources by embracing practices, technologies that eliminate waste and eliminate harmful materials, chemicals, to foster a sustainable world for today, tomorrow, and for future generations to come. So thank you all for doing what you do, for being advocates, and for inviting me here tonight to be with you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Wow, so much stuff there. Circular economy, plastics, I mean, in the last couple of years, people have really realized, how very bad plastics are. You said it right at the beginning, they disintegrated into microparticles and they're everywhere now, and so I grew up with plastics. We all grew up with plastics, I think of like in The Graduate, when he goes, plastics, that's the career you got to go into. So it's part of our culture, and we need to get rid of it. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, can you hear me? This is Peter Gore.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah, and thanks, Mary. Again, yeah, just a lot of material. I wanted to ask you about the circular economy. That's very important, but it's probably only as effective as its weakest link. What in that circular economy, what is currently the weak link in that?
Good question. I'm not sure I really know. I do know that when I told you about the recycling rates, I can guarantee you that maybe a third of that's being recycled because of the high contamination levels. So I see a disconnect at the collection for the materials that these manufacturers need to get back. And when you have somebody like Coca-Cola saying that they're going to be using 100% recycled content, and not too long of a time that they need the bottles back, I think that, to me, as a consumer and in my position, I see that as a weak link, because the science is there. They know how to get their materials. They know how to break down the different plastics and make new products from it, but they have to have it in their hand to be able to do that. And that's why this EPR, I think, is such a big key for having circularity happen, because they're going to be the ones directly working with the recyclers, with that whole infrastructure that kind of takes the onerous off the average resident to do what's right. We will still be a part of it, an important part of it. Certainly as a consumer, by not buying plastic is where we can use our money and our voices the strongest. But when we do find ourselves with something that can be recycled, is to make sure it gets in a recycling cart. But I don't know that I answered that so directly, because I really I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, that would be something to really ask a manufacturer. Or, you know, there's the manufacturer sorters. You know, there's a few people involved in that circle.
Yeah, I asked because I can't help but be a little skeptical when manufacturers are promoting recycling, and I wonder if their heart is truly in that, or if it's more an issue of
More about money, more about the bottom line.
I know it makes
Everything's about money.
Exactly.
I mean, not to this group, you know, we're the choir, but business, they're not in it. You know, I remember when, you know, as contamination started to rise, I remember the CEO from Waste Management was at a conference that I was attending, and he got up on stage. He was our keynote speaker, and he said, Waste Management is not in the business to lose money, and glass is a negative, and we're looking to take glass out of the stream. And this was over 5 years ago. And so here in Illinois, we have such, especially those of us like a SWANCC or a West Cook County, or, you know, somebody who's working closely with municipal contracts. We said, absolutely, don't let them take your glass out. But they did in a lot of states. So I think the plastic manufacturers, if they're going to vamp up, okay, this is one, we have to dial it back. So as electric cars are more prevalent and plentiful and more the norm, those makers of plastics have to use those petrochemicals and fossil fuels somehow, and they're putting it in the plastics. I mean, I'm so shooting from my own personal hip and my own beliefs that they are making these plastics, and it's up to us consumers whether or not we're going to use them or not, right? So that's where we have choices, but they're going to be making them. So they are trying to play nice. And how lovely to take the toxins out, to take the benzene and the styrene and the PFSAs and the BP and the BPS. Things that we know are health risks. To our land, our air, our water, and ourselves. So they're trying to be better players because they don't want to lose their business, long story short.
Yeah, we have, oh, go ahead.
Well, I know contamination is a big challenge. And when we went from multiple stream to single stream, making it convenient for consumers, was that the right thing to do, or did we go a little too far? Because it's, you know, I wouldn't find it. Go ahead.
Contamination for the single stream were unintended consequences. We wanted people to recycle. We wanted to make it easier, and also recyclers wanted the materials dry, so those open 18-gallon bins weren't doing it. But you look at places that have dual stream, or in Japan where they have 15 or 20 different streams. When I was over in Ireland, they had drop-offs that had at least 15 streams of where to separate your materials. That is the way to get the materials that you want. And another unintended consequence about the single stream, ask the paper mills. You know, paper started to get contaminated with food and beverage and other things that were mixed in those carts. So they've had to deal with that for many years now. They'd much prefer a single stream of paper and cardboard than mixing it all together. But I'll tell you too that recyclers have put so much money into the infrastructure of their sorting facilities that they will never go backwards to dual stream or multiple streams. as well as the ergodynamics of that, the cart that, or the truck that comes down our streets or alleys and grabs the cart and empties it. That makes it, it's lower liability, it's less workman's comp for companies because of that setup. So for all those reasons, I don't see it changing, but absolutely to have multiple streams, you get cleaner materials.
Okay, we have some questions trickling in through the chat. I forgot to mention, you can certainly ask your question that way. From Karen, let's see, I live in Mount Prospect and I accidentally recycled my cell phone. When I called the village, they said the recycling went into a landfill. Is this correct?
The recycling went in a landfill? Well, they have Republic, right? You have Republic, and Republic has a recycling MRF right there in Mount Prospect. So I don't know, if you put quality materials, the acceptable materials in your cart, it will go onto a tipping floor. But say, I'm going to just pick out some names. Bill Thompson is a bad recycler, and Bill Thompson puts food and bowling balls and holiday lights and textiles in his recycling cart, along with a few plastic bottles. And those carts are going to the same MRF to be tipped on the same floor. And there is a high level of contamination in the area, it will be landfilled. The recyclers will tell you that. So it's important that we put fewer and higher quality materials in our recycling carts to make sure that doesn't happen, because there are markets for bottles, the ones and the twos, for fives, and certainly for paper and cardboard.
Okay, but when I called, I think that's what I did was recycle. I was going through my newspapers, and I think I put my cell phone down, and it got all wrapped up in the pile of newspapers, and I threw the whole thing in the recycling bin. So I called and I said, well, is there someplace, could I call the facility and see if they found my cell phone? And they said, oh no, it all goes into a landfill.
Well, I'd like to know who you talked to, because Mount Prospect prides themselves in doing a great job, and they do. They're a wonderful partner with SWANCC, with our electronics program there. If you know of who you talked to, Karen, I would like to report that.
Yeah, it was somebody, I called Public Works and talked to somebody at Public Works.
We get calls at the transfer station, engagement rings, heirloom things. Once a truck, whether it be recycling or garbage, picks up a load from your house, they're picking up from 100 other households. And by the time it's all mixed together and compacted and brought to either respective locations, it's near impossible to find anything but maybe an elephant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, from Barbara Hill, there's a market for plastic, number one, and number two, is there a market for any other kind of plastic? If not, does it go to landfill or into waterways and eventually the oceans?
Well, because it's not being exported, we don't have people in other developing countries picking out the valuables and throwing the low-grade stuff into the environment, both as litter that then goes into the oceans. So there are markets for ones, there are markets for twos, there are markets for fives, and depending on what recycler you talk to, they have their lines for markets for other materials. They're kind of proprietary with that. They don't like to share with other recyclers where they go, but generally speaking, the threes, definitely sixes have been out of the cart for a long time. Styrene is not recycled either in rigid or in expanded form. And then seven is just kind of a crappy other, it's just a bunch of stuff put together to whatever it makes, and it's unidentifiable is what it means. So that's why focus on bottles, tubs, jars, and let's see, bottles, jugs, tubs, and jars for plastics.
And Renee sent a question directly to me. What should people do with fruit and vegetable waste if they can't do composting where they live? Can it go in lawn waste bags?
Depends where you live. There are some ride-along programs that have just popped up within the last year or two that a lot of residents aren't familiar with. So you can put fruits and vegetables in with the landscape organics in many communities. And if you're in a community, like I'm in Park Ridge, Tim, you can't tell on me. I put my coffee grounds out there. What I don't bring to my worms in the office, if I'm at home for the weekend, I sometimes will put my fruits and vegetables or my coffee grounds in my landscape cart, and they disintegrate before it even gets picked up in a week. But be sure not to put any kind of packaging. Don't put in anything that says compostable. Those things are not wanted at composting facilities. That is contamination when you take it out for a landscape. So be very, very careful and selective what you would put in a landscape or organics cart, because it can't take everything that can commercially be composted.
Okay. From Barbara, again, I once heard somebody, possibly you, say if you aren't sure whether something is recyclable, put it in the recycling bin. It will get sorted out and sent to a landfill if it's not recyclable.
That's all thinking. That's all thinking, Barbara, because now it's when in doubt, throw it out.
I like that.
Yeah, I need you to erase everything that you heard before. There's new laws, new rules.
Okay. From Carolyn White, what happens to the grocery bags that are collected at the grocery stores? Are they really able to be reused?
I'll tell you who wants those. Trex Lumber. It's a United States company that will buy the plastic bags and film together, and they mix it with some sawdust that they get from a residue from something else, and they make a composite, a plastic composite for decking and docks and benches and furniture.
Yeah, I think I read something about some guy turning them into construction blocks too. And a friend of mine actually had a business where he turned them into extrudable pellets. And you could, like, you know, make all kinds of stuff with the little pellets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's markets for the bags. It's just, they're very, very difficult to sort at a materials recovery facility because they're light, they blow, and they tangle in the machinery. As those star sorters go around, those plastic bags start, when you get enough of them, it stops the machine cold, and people have to go in and cut them out.
Dangerous, and the line stops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, what else? Oh, Chris Johnson. Do you see Illinois getting rid of plastic bags at the grocery stores and other stores like California did?
Well, I think if we go to the big all packaging, EPR, I think that that's going to be one of the solutions. Whether or not people want to give up their plastic bags is another thing. Certainly reusable bags to me are superior for many different reasons. That's a hard one. I know Evanston and Oak Park both in Chicago have some bag taxes, but there have been some loopholes that the lobbying companies get around, and they kind of reconstruct what was meant to happen. So I don't see them as being totally what Ireland has done, where you just do eliminate plastic bags. So I think the short-sightedness of that too is by removing plastic bags, like if for the collection at a retail store, there's more film in our world than there are plastic bags. And if we eliminate the plastic bags, it's going to it could impact the collection of the film as well. So I think that if you lump it all together and have EPR, a collection take back, that they will at least, if they're being used, they'll be recovered.
Okay, and Phil, I believe, just has a comment here. It's a few paragraphs long. I volunteered at the Park Ridge Household Items Drop-Off event in 2019 and was disappointed that we were told to refuse so much stuff that one, was recyclable, and two, was advertised ahead of time as acceptable for drop-off. Turns out the recycler Park Ridge was working with was only interested in taking the valuable stuff and refusing the recyclable but not valuable to them stuff. So while good intentioned, all the people who showed up with stuff they thought that they could finally properly dispose of were turned away and just ended up having to throw things away, especially because they had to pay to be able to drop things off. Maybe reiterate with Park Ridge the importance of it being a green event, not just a moneymaker for Park Ridge and the recycling company that they work with.
So I'd like to comment on a couple things. Park Ridge Chamber of Commerce for years did their electronics recycling program. It was back in the years where you could get a vendor to work with you, and they sometimes would pay you money for the items that they took. And then the law changed everything, our Electronics Recycling Act law. And now it's, you know, there's some things that are banned, and it's expensive to recycle a CRT tube TV. So the electronics part of it has changed. And so that's why Park Ridge came to SWANCC to say, we need your help. We want to use your vendor. We want, when we do an event, it's going to be co-sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. And we'll have Park Ridge staff, public works staff man, and we'll get volunteers from the high school. And that's kind of how it runs. So across the street at Avenues for Independence is the shredding truck, and in Public Works is the electronics. And those are the two components that I'm directly involved with. The chamber collects $5, and it's a willful donation. You don't have to. And this is something that I was against because it's not SWANCC. It's something that the chamber has done to fund some of their community events. So I get it, but you don't have to pay it. And then they worked with a textiles recycler, I think is what you're referring to, that they were turning some things away because electronics and paper shredding weren't part of the chamber's program, but the textiles part was. Am I right? Are you still there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hello, thank you.
Phil,
It was electronics items that they were refusing.
okay, so there's a very short list because of the Recycling Act. I have it right here. And you can go on the agency's website to see what it is. And this is dictated by the state. It's dictated by the manufacturers that help subsidize the program, Phil. So they don't want to be taking an old turntable that they didn't make. The manufacturers, Sony and all the big ones are in it called a clearinghouse, and they're the ones that dictate this list now. Because in the beginning, we used to take anything with a cord. We don't take any kinds of appliances, microwaves are off the table. So it's a very short list, and this is dictated by the state law.
I work for a recycler, and we would have taken a lot of the things that were being turned away. So that was frustrating to be like, I know that we would take that. It was unfortunate that it was one listed ahead of time, and then two not taken at the time. So especially when people paid their $5, I literally ended up running to the front to get $5 to give it back to irate people that we were saying, no, we're not taking this car full of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, Park Ridge isn't doing any, they canceled their event last year and they're not doing one this year.
Yeah.
So I think that it needs to be rethought. They have a new director of their chamber now. But in anything that I publish, I lose control once I let go of it. I always put the list of what's acceptable because that helps people know what they can bring. Not always do my partners publish what I ask them to publish. So I apologize for, the bad feeling that you had there. And if you want to talk to me later about where you work and things that you'll take that aren't accepted in the program, maybe I can refer people to your recycling company.
Mary, this is Tim Ilbert. I also want to say that we've just, as of this week, formed a new sustainability commission. And I think we can add this to the list of things that we want to target. So if I understood, kind of to summarize it, we should reinitiate that probably in concert with the chamber, but we should have very clear instructions to those people that want to bring stuff.
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah,
a
and
simple
yay, Tim.
message. Yeah.
Tim had a lot to do with being a co-chair of the task force. I'm so excited to see this commission develop now. So kudos to you, and very excited to see that commission be appointed and get working.
Yeah, we'll be talking.
Yeah,
And not to disparage the event, it was phenomenal to take truckloads and truckloads of all the stuff that was accepted and subsequently processed. I felt there was more opportunity to get more crap out of the landfills and into the right channels.
and even SWANCC's program, we have to do what the state says because that's who helps subsidize this program. But Apt Electronics, sometimes Goodwill and Best Buy will take an expanded list of stuff. They'll take the cables, they'll take some other things. Apt Electronics will take a microwave. So when people call, I try and give them alternatives to landfilling it, always.
Excellent. Thank you.
So there's a couple more questions here from Karen again. So I have a friend who drinks bottled water and says the bottles go to a landfill anyway. I usually take them from her to recycle if I'm with her. Can I tell her next time that she is wrong?
Yeah, bottles are a very sought out material for Coca-Cola, who's looking for 100% recycled content. Unfortunately, so few of the bottles are getting recycled because people are throwing them away. With knowing that the system is flawed and knowing as much as you all know, not everybody knows everything. And there's a lot of cynicism towards recycling. There's a lot of commentary. NPR did an article about companies knowing way back in the 60s that what they were producing, they were pulling the wool over our eye, that a lot of it wasn't being recycled, and it's come to fruition to be true. So I get that people are a little bit cynical about it, but yes, please tell her that her plastic bottles and her glass bottles are welcome in the recycling bin, and they will be recycled here domestically.
And they shouldn't be crushed and the cap should be on?
Right, do not crush and put the cap back on. In fact, I'm looking around, I don't know where I have guidelines. Oh, on the agency's website, we have this calendar of tips of things to do, not just for Earth Month. It used to be for April. Now it's for every day. But on the back, there is our recycling guidelines. And I purposely didn't, do that presentation tonight, but I'd be happy to talk to any of you of the do's and the don'ts, or you can go find this on the agency's website and print it off. You can just do the guidelines. You don't have to do the whole calendar, and put it in your kitchen so your family knows.
Okay, Bill has a question. Seems like Best Buy takes anything electronics except, I think it's just a comment, except tube TVs. I think you have to pay to give Best Buy your tube TV.
Yeah, so they do take a lot of the other peripheral things that the agency's program doesn't take. But if you live in a SWANCC community and you have one of the old tube TVs, you bring it to us because there's not an extra fee for you. You pay indirectly with your garbage tipping fees in your community. But there's if you go to Apt or if you go to Best Buy, sometimes they'll charge you $30 to $50 depending on its size.
Mary Jane asks, where do we recycle microwaves?
The only place I know to recycle, get a microwave recycled is Apt Electronics, or to leave it out a couple days before garbage pickup. The scrappers will come and they'll gladly take that, and they'll take it to a scrap metal place for recycling. Otherwise, it goes in your garbage. I know that's hard to hear. It is.
How about Jan says dehumidifiers?
So that's considered an appliance, and we take them for $25. I think Apt Electronics takes it for a little bit less.
Okay. And Pat Nucio, when I open cans, should I keep the can cover with the can for recycling?
Like a tuna fish can, Pat?
A soup can.
Yeah, right, like a tuna fish or a soup can, something like that.
Once you've emptied and rinsed that can, you can put that top back in and it'll sink to the bottom and then put it in your recycling bin. Because once it goes to be sorted, the magnet will pull that out.
I thought there was a minimum size that we should not be putting through.
So
the machine.
for glass jars and bottles, they don't want the small, like a beer cap. I say either try and repurpose it or throw it away. They don't want those because they can clog machinery. But if you have a pickle jar or applesauce, something that's 2 to 3 inches in diameter or larger, that can go in, and it can
Okay.
either stay on the glass jar or you can put it in separately.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat unless, oh, whoop. Comment, by the way, copper, wire, pipe, etc. There is a company in Lake County, Prairie View, that pays you for the copper.
There's a couple scrappers we have on our website. There's one in Des Plaines that we refer people to a lot. If you want to make the effort, you know, they want more than just a copper tube. You know, if you go with a copper tube, you're not going to get a lot of cash back. But if you have substantial amount, it probably, you know, they'll weigh it, and depending on market value, will give you something.
Yeah, there's a couple of trucks that drive around on garbage the night before garbage day doing that sort of thing.
That's their living. Yeah, that's their living. So anytime I have anything steel, metal, whether it's an old chair, a table, I'll just put it out. And I put it on top of the garbage can because I'm in an alley and I don't want to take up space. So it really sticks out, and they come by pretty much daily, and they're happy to take that.
Okay.
Really quick, sorry, I work for a scrapper. If you don't want money for it, we'll have a pile where you can just come and throw stuff, and we'll tell you if it's good or not. And you might not get a buck or a penny or whatever for your copper, but it's going into our giant sorting machines and all that stuff. So,
oh, that's good to know. So, who do you work for, Phil?
Sims Metal Management.
Oh, okay.
Sims Limited.
And where is that located?
We have half a dozen facilities. We have one in West Chicago. We have
Okay,
one
I
in
know that
Pilsen.
they used to be electronics recyclers.
Yep. Yeah. We still do. Our West Chicago will melt down circuit boards and take the gold and any minute amounts of anything valuable in those.
I used to work with United Recycling.
Okay.
Bob, have you been there a while?
No. 3 years.
Okay.
Okay, Jan writes, what about juice boxes or the soup boxes from Trader Joe's?
Yes, those are highly recyclable. They've got good long paper fibers. This is an instant where this collaboration stakeholder group called the Carton Council over 10 years ago gave money to material recovery facilities to get sorting equipment to be able to sort these containers. Just make sure the straw is out and that they're empty and clean, and you can put the little plastic cap back on those so they don't get flattened. So the optical sorters see them as a carton rather than as fiber.
Oh, is that part of the AI the sorting?
No.
Okay.
It can be though. You know, you can program those robots to pick out whatever you want them to pick out, except probably a piece of paper. I'm not sure that they can suction that, but I'm not totally sure.
That was amazing in that video.
Can I just?
Wire,
ask a quick
oh, go
question
ahead, Karen.
about the milk cartons. Am I not supposed to smash those?
Don't smash anything anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, don't be, it used to be we had those small bins. So I'll never forget, I was doing a big assembly for students, and I loosened the lid. So when I smashed that big milk jug, that, you know, the projectile lid went flying, and I got their attention at least. But that's what we used to tell people to do. That's why I said, erase what you know, because things are so different now. Do not flatten plastics, don't flatten the cartons. And don't flatten cans. They're easier to be recovered if they're not flattened.
Okay. Thank you.
And Barbara asks about wire hangers, clothes hangers.
So wire clothes hangers are considered tanglers. Do not put those in your recycling cart. You can try and offer them to a donation outlet like a Goodwill, a Savers. You can try and give them back to your cleaners if you have clothes clean. Or put it on Facebook, put it on Nextdoor, or put it on Buy Nothing. I'm amazed at some of the things people will post, and hangers are sometimes things that people need.
And just again, Mary Jane, you're from Park Ridge and you work for SWANCC. So someone asked where you were from. And I'm
Yes,
assuming-
I live in Park Ridge and I work for SWANCC.
Okay, great. And I don't see any more questions, but Peter Gore has a final comment about our campaign.
Yeah, what I wanted to announce to everybody, the Northwest Cook County Group, we're working with the Woods and Wetlands Group, that's Lake County. And we're working on a campaign that's going to be targeted towards restaurants. It's an extension of the Cutout Cutlery campaign. A very simple task that we're looking for volunteers. We're developing a flyer and we want to distribute the flyer to local restaurants just to have them on their website and on takeout orders, have people opt in to plastic utensils and those things, which largely, people are taking food home, they have their own utensils, something like over 80% of those utensils are just getting thrown out and they're not recyclable. They end up in landfill. So it's a simple task and we hope to start to mobilize people to undertake that. And of course, there's a multitude more of campaigns and other activities that we can follow up with. So information about that is on our website.
And you want those delivered to restaurants or to individual households?
No, to restaurants, so that when an order comes in, it will say, please don't include utensils.
Yeah, I have seen that on occasion on a few websites that they ask,
Yes,
you want
it's-
utensils.
Yeah, and some of the national delivery services like DoorDash and Grubhub, I think DoorDash is doing it, but there's sort of a national campaign and we're trying to localize it.
I think Olive Garden does it. You got to be emphatic though. All right. If there's no more questions, thank you very much, Mary. It was just a presentation, a very important issue, and I learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's nice to see you.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody else for